In this set of notes, we're going to primarily focus on linear equations in two variables, and our two variables being x and y. So your favorite linear equation in two variables is y equals mx plus b. This is the equation of a line in slope-intercept form, where the equation has a y-intercept of 0, b. The steepness of the line is determined by the slope. Y equals mx plus b is slope-intercept form. A vertical line is in the form x equals a. A horizontal line is in the form y equals a. In the next section, we're going to sketch a graph of two different types of linear equations. In example 1, we're going to do a linear equation in slope-intercept form. And in example 2, we're going to do a linear equation that's in standard form. So let's first take a look at the slope-intercept form equation, which is y equals 2x plus 1. We're going to sketch a graph of this equation by using the slope and the y-intercept. All right, so if you want to graph this line, we're going to start with the y-intercept, and then we're going to use the slope to find the next point. All right, so I've put a point here at 0, 1, which is our y-intercept, and then I'm going to use the slope, which is 2. And the slope of 2 would be a rise of 2 and a run of 1. So I'm going to go up 2 and over 1. And then I'm going to put my next point. Now I can keep doing that over and over and over to get my line, but it's not really necessary. I really only need 2 points. All right, so the other equation I'm looking at is x plus y equals 2. So another way that we can draw a line from the equation is we can use the x and y intercept. So to find the x and y intercept, we're going to make x 0 to find the y-intercept, and we're going to make y 0 to find the x-intercept. Okay, so here you see I substituted in the 0 for x, and I got y equals 2. So I substituted the 0 here in for x, and I got y equals 2. So one of my points is 0, 2. That's going to be my y-intercept. And then I make my y 0 to find my x-intercept, which is 2, 0. So I'm going to plot these 2 points, and I'm going to draw my line from there. All right, so I went ahead and made both of these lines a little darker so that you could see them better. This first line was my y equals 2x plus 1 line, the red one. And the blue line right here is the line that we created using the x and y intercepts for the x plus y equals 2 line. So these are actually two different kinds of lines. We used two different methods to graph them both. So just so you know that there are different ways that we can graph lines from equations. Finding the slope of a line. When you write the equation or rewrite it in slope-intercept form, you can find the slope of the line that way. Or if you're given points instead of an equation, you can use the slope formula. When you're using the slope formula, order matters. So the one thing that you want to do when you're given 2 points is you want to make sure that you label your points y1 and y2 and x1 and x2 so that you know what numbers go where in your slope formula. And again, remember what I said before about if you're substituting in a negative number, that negative number needs to be in parentheses. So just make sure that when you're doing the formulas that you're inserting those negative numbers in parentheses. All right, so in the first example, we have what is the slope of 0, 4, and 1, negative 1. First, let's label our points. I'm going to label the first point x1, y1, and I'm going to label the second point x2, y2. Once I have my points labeled, I can go ahead and insert those numbers into my formula. All right, so I have substituted in my y2 right here and my y1 right here. So I have -1 minus 4 over, so this is going to be in the numerator, my x difference, which is x2, which is 1, minus x1, which is 0. So order matters. Remember that order matters. So if I have y2 here, I need to have x2 here. And if I have y1 here, I need to have x1 here. So that order does matter. If you crisscross these, you're going to end up with the wrong answer. So when I simplify this, I get -5 over 1 or -5. So the slope is -5. And number 2, we have a linear equation in standard form. And so in order to find the slope for this one, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so we have 2 steps that we use to rewrite this equation in slope-intercept form. The first step is to subtract this x term from both sides of the equal sign. So I'm subtracting 4x from both sides. I'm basically moving this 4x over to here. So when I do that, I end up changing the sign to negative. So I end up with 8y equals -4x plus 16. I put my x term in front of the number because that's where it is in y equals mx plus b. This would be my mx plus b, so I'm going to put that first. The next step, step 2, is to divide everything away from y. So I'm dividing by 8. So I divide everything by 8. And I end up with, when I simplify this, y equals -1/2 x plus 2. My slope in this case now is going to be -1/2. This is my slope, -1/2. So when we're writing linear equations in 2 variables, if x1 and y1 is a point on the line of slope m, and xy is any other point on the line, then we can use the slope formula to find the slope. We can also write equations in the slope, point-slope form. This tells us a point on the line and the slope. It looks like this: y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. So this is just another way that we can write an equation of a line or a linear equation, and we can just substitute in an x1 and a y1 into this form, and we can simplify it. And when we simplify that, we're going to get our slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So in example 1, we're going to find an equation of a line in point-slope form under the following guidelines. The slope is -3, and it passes through the point 1, 5. So we're going to use this information and our point slope formula to determine the equation of the line. First, I'm going to substitute my point x1, y1 into the formula. All right, so after substitution, this is what it'll look like. This is my x1, this is my y1. So in my equation, I would write y minus y1 equals m, which is my slope, and that's already given to me, -3. -3 times the quantity x minus x1, which in this case x1 is 1. And then I'm going to simplify. Okay, so the first thing I did was I distributed my negative 3, and negative 3 times x gave me a negative 3x. And then I did negative 3 times a negative 1. Negative 3 times a negative 1 gave me a positive 3. And then I moved my minus 5 to the other side by adding 5 to both sides. And there I added 5 right here, plus 5. And I just have one more step. I combined my 3 and my 5 to get plus 8. So my final equation in slope-intercept form is y equals negative 3 plus 8.